Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Coffee with Tamara. It is so good to see you all on. I've got my coffee and I am ready to talk about innovation being the ultimate hack for innovation. I know both personally and for building cultures of innovation. Now, before I dive in, I just want to remind you of a few things. Number one, we've got some great interviews coming up on Coffee with Tamara. So as you know, I tend to do these kind of deep dive topics that hopefully provide insight, help you work smarter, kickstart your week, maybe even your month or year. But also I love to interview people who are out there shaking it up, disrupting everyday innovators from across the globe. So if you've got someone you think I should look at to interview, hit us up and let me know. The last thing I just want to remind you of is that this is more of a show with syndication than it is a traditional podcast. And what I mean by that is you absolutely have the opportunity to interact, to ask questions, to put your 2 cents in. I fully believe in the collective wisdom of this group. So if you're watching this live on YouTube, which is where we stream it live every Wednesdays at 10 a.m., sometimes we do pop-ups on Fridays. I would encourage you to put your thoughts and comments and say hello in the chat bar because, like I said, it's collective wisdom. So your brilliance matters. And here's another way I like to think of it. If you have a question, I bet you somebody else has that question too. So if you ask it, you're benefiting not just yourself, but also people around you. And if you have an insight or an aha, that's going to help spark some new thinking in somebody else as well. So what do you say we get to today's podcast, which is all about forgiveness being the ultimate innovation hack. Now, I know this is going to sound a little bit out in left field, this whole topic, but just I want you to go with me on this because this is something that I've really come to realize over the last, oh my gosh, almost 28 years of being in business and innovation, both in the innovation field, but also as an entrepreneur, as a business leader inside companies. I've kind of been across the board in kind of sizes of companies, everything from the billion-dollar companies to the startups. And I realized that there are a few things that hold innovation back. And it's not the processes or the initiatives. Lord knows we do not need any more of those. How many of you out there have initiative fatigue? Oh man, I know I do, right? Innovation doesn't actually come from initiative or process. It actually comes from people. That's why most initiatives, change management, innovation initiatives, processes fail. It's because they haven't included the people. And when we think about people, right, we are dynamic, sometimes erratic. We are emotional creatures with a little bit of rational thought. It's really not the other way around. And so what holds innovation back and our ability to be innovators and at the company level and team level, our ability to collaborate and drive innovation that outmaneuvers the change in the marketplace and outperforms the competition. The things that really hold us back aren't the things that are on paper. They're not the bullet points of our job description. They're not the processes or initiative. It's the softer side of things. It is self-sabotage. It is psychological safety. It is these internal resistors to change in our brain that we all have that kind of push us back into status quo. And it is definitely forgiveness, or in this case, a lack of forgiveness. So I want to flip how you think about this word forgiveness and what it means for you, not just personally, but also professionally. We talk a lot about it personally, right? To forgive someone, to let go of that energy, to create those boundaries, all incredibly important. But really what I'm talking about here is forgiveness professionally so that we can solve our problems faster, so that we can seize those big opportunities, so that we can be stronger teammates and leaders for each other, so that we can positively impact the bottom line in a way that only innovation really can. I mean, that is the key to growth. I think we all know it, especially in uncertain, changing times. I mean, it's true all the time, but it's especially true now. So let's unpack forgiveness a little bit, a lot actually, and talk about it. So I want to talk about how I'm defining forgiveness so that you can define it too in your workplace as well. And then I have, 9 things for you to consider why forgiveness is going to be really important to you and into your work and into driving innovation. Why forgiveness is the ultimate hack. And as I'm going through these, I want you to think about in your workplace, whether you are a small business owner or the leader of a large company or the president of a mid-sized company, wherever you are on that scale, I want you to really think about if you really have forgiveness as part of your culture as I start to talk about it. What I find when I work with companies, whether that's as a keynote at an association or a company meeting, whether that's, in a workshop with a company to solve problems, or whether that's, coming in and going deep with a client as a fractional innovation and performance officer. Regardless of how I'm doing it, I find that our cultures are not as forgiving as we like to think they are. It's a little bit like failure, right? Everybody says they're good at failure. They embrace failure. But when I start to really dig into the culture and how that translates into the day-to-day, I find that's really not the case. So I know, can you guys see it? I have my hair is going everywhere today. Okay. So sorry, that was a little bit of a side note about my hair if you're watching, but it's a little bit everywhere today. All right, so let me talk first. And I printed all this stuff out because I didn't want to miss a thing for you. So let me grab some coffee, give you a second to grab yours. And let me talk first about kind of how I'm defining forgiveness in this context. So in a professional setting or in a work business setting, it really means letting go of grudges and past mistakes. So letting go of grudges, letting go of past mistakes, and I would argue learning from them as well, but letting them go. So we got to learn and let go. So the way to have forgiveness in your workplace is to learn and let go. Now, I find that we're not even good at either of those, really. The learning is hard, right? We go, it's a failure, and we put it on the failure shelf, and we never want to look at it again. Or the letting go is hard. Every decision that we make moving forward has this baggage on it of this failure that we had in the past. So we don't learn from it and we don't let go. It just creates barriers to innovation moving forward. So forgiveness in this context, learning and letting go, is also about creating an environment where people feel safe to move forward without the weight of previous errors holding them back. So let's take this over to a sports analogy for a second. Have you ever watched a football game or basketball, whatever it is? I'm going to use football as my example because that's the one I know the best. And you'll watch the quarterback throw an interception, and then you'll think, oh man, this game is over. And then you'll watch that same quarterback in the next play, thread the needle and complete the most amazing pass to his wide receiver. So to me, that's forgiveness. Okay. It didn't work. Threw an interception. I'm sure he learned from it. And then you got to let it go. You got to shake it off in order to get to the next play. Because if that quarterback, think about it for a second, if that quarterback had held on to that feeling and that experience of throwing the interception, they'd probably never throw another football again. And the ones that they threw would be timid and probably with that baggage on it, they'd probably make more mistakes. I mean, how many of us, when we make one mistake, if we hold on to it, we actually keep making mistakes because it's just clouding our judgment and our ability. So we got to move forward without the weight of the previous errors holding us back. That's why I love the learn and let go, learn and let go. That is forgiveness. So let's talk about there's kind of 9 things, as I said, that are really the benefits of forgiveness in the workplace. And as I go in these, again, I'm asking you, do you feel like you have forgiveness in your workplace? Put in the chat bar for me. Do you feel like that you really have forgiveness in the workplace? When I kind of talk about it as learning and letting go of grudges and past mistakes or errors, failures, and then having a place where people feel safe to move forward without the weight of the previous errors holding them back. Well, I'm tongue-tied today. Right. No, not when you put it that way. I thought so. All talk in my company. Okay. Yeah, all talk. Al, thanks for posting that in there because I'll tell you, that is a lot of leaders give a lot of airtime to failure is good for us. And, we move forward without the errors of the past and we're going to take risks, but they don't really mean it. And when you look at how they operate on a day-to-day basis and how their culture is driven, how their performance metrics are created and enforced, it's the opposite, isn't it? Yeah, it's so frustrating too, because you just want to shake them and be like, you're saying one thing and you're doing another. And I think the intention is good, but the execution is bad. And guess what? This is fear holding people back. Those leaders have just as much fear as you do. It just comes from a little bit of a different place and maybe it presents itself differently. But believe me, the reason those two things are not in alignment with your bosses is because there's fear on their side. Okay. Yes, if you're watching, that is a dog in the background that looks like a big fluff ball back there. It's my Pyrenees. What is he? He's I can't remember his other half. He's Pyrenees something. I don't know why. It'll come to me. All right. 9 reasons why forgiveness really matters. So number 1, when we forgive, we actually clear our minds of unnecessary stress and mental clutter. So this allows us to focus better. It allows us to think more creatively. It allows us to pave the way for innovative ideas. So think of when we hold on to things, it's like a layer of gook on our brain. And we can't get to mental clarity when we have that gook. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier when, you make a mistake and then you hold on to that. So everything you do is clouded by that mistake you made. And then you keep making it over and over again. It's because we haven't cleared our minds. So forgiveness allows us to clear our minds of that stress, that unnecessary mental clutter, and pave the way for more focus, more creativity, more ideas moving forward. So when we don't forgive, we hold on. So I'm going to take this to a personal place because I think in our personal experiences, we can kind of relate to the examples and bring it back to business. Have you ever talked to someone and they did something that wronged you? Okay. And I'm not talking huge even. I'm talking like just an everyday thing, like they said something that was kind of rude. And you carried that around with you day after day after day. And so the next time you met with them, anything they said was clouded by that comment they made prior, even if they've proven themselves to be a different person in that experience, in that meeting. Well, that's what happens when we have all that clutter in our brains. Everything moving forward is clouded by this. So we got to forgive and we got to learn and let go. Now, maybe we learned that that person's not for us, but if we don't let go of that comment, we can't see all the other parts of that person either. So it actually creates mental clarity, which is a really positive thing. Okay, the next one is it helps build trust. Now, this is a really big one in my book. So forgiveness builds trust within teams. Anyone, and by teams, anyone that you're connected with. So when here's the truth, when people know their mistakes won't be held against them forever, they're more likely to communicate openly and collaborate effectively. It's that simple. If you say something in a meeting and maybe what you said isn't received well, or maybe you're speaking out of turn or whatever it is, if your team held that against you every single time moving forward, you would never want to communicate with them openly. You'd never want to collaborate. You would hold off. You would take a step back and you would be very reserved. So forgiveness builds trust. It builds trust. And I think that's so important. You can't have innovation, real growth without trust within your team. So you got to make sure that you're not holding things against people. Now, but this is why, just real quickly, I want to say the learn part is really important because you're not saying that happened, who cares, never mind. You're saying, hey, let's learn from that experience. Let's move forward. But I'm not going to hold against you the fact that what you did didn't work, that what you said wasn't received well, that risk that you took failed, right? That idea you had bombed. Whatever it is, it's about letting go of it. And that's what builds trust. And that open communication and that collaboration is so important for innovation. All right, the next one is forgiveness actually encourages risk-taking. So a culture of forgiveness encourages risk-taking because team members aren't paralyzed by the fear of harsh consequences. This, to no surprise, leads to bolder, more creative solutions. It leads to more innovation. We always say as leaders that we want our teams to take more risk. But if that risk doesn't work, and let's face it, sometimes you can do everything right and it still doesn't work. Sometimes you can do everything wrong and it does work, right? There's a lot of outside circumstances to everything. So if I know that there's forgiveness, I'm more likely to be all in and take risks. Here's what I find happens on the flip side if you don't have forgiveness. People are overly worried, your teams are overly worried about getting it right out of the gate, which, by the way, never happens, does it? We never get it right out of the gate. And when we do that, we get stuck in analysis paralysis, or we make the absolute wrong decisions because the filter that we're putting it all through is this safe? Is this comfortable? Will this not get me in trouble if it doesn't work? And that just waters everything down. Years ago, many, many years ago, when I got to UC Berkeley, that's where I went to university for my undergrad, I was sure I didn't belong. So every comment I made in class in the first semester, everything I did was driven by this desire to prove my worth because I was so afraid of getting it wrong. I was so afraid of taking any risks. And I'll never forget, I was in this, I don't know, global cultures class. I don't remember the name of the class, but it was talking about cultures across the globe. And, we had these study hall sessions. So we had our big class, which was like 800 people. And then we had these smaller classes we had to go to that was usually run by the graduate student. And there was like 12 of us. And I was responsible for creating an analysis for this passage we had just read and then presenting it to the small class for conversation. And I'm reading this thing, and every instinct in me is telling me that the insight in this is that cultures are very different across the globe and that we attach different meanings to different things. But I was so worried about getting it right that I thought there's no way this is it, right? There's no way that this is the right answer. So I overthought it, right? I had analysis paralysis, and then I came up with the exact opposite answer because I thought, oh, this is the safe answer, which is that there's this commonality. Now there is commonality between us as humans across the globe. That's not what I mean. And I don't remember the details of the passage, but you get the point. The point is I had it 100% wrong. So I never forget, I went in and the graduate student who was leading the class said, Tamara, can you present your analysis for conversation? And I said, yeah, after reading this passage, blah, blah, blah. I believe that what it's telling us is that we're all the same. And I remember him shaking his head and looking at me like, what is wrong with you? Like, it was so clearly in the passage that it was the other, right? It was the opposite. And I remember all the students looking at me like I was an idiot. Oh my God, I was so panicked. But I did that because I was so afraid of taking risks. I was so afraid of putting myself out there because what if I was wrong? So I took what I thought was the safe path. And I remember him being like, no, Tamara, actually, can so-and-so talk instead? Like I got shut down. It was horrible. Now, there was forgiveness because once I realized what I was doing, I came back that next week with my thoughts and opinions, and nobody held it against me that I got it wrong in the first week. But man, I share that story. Gosh, it's been so long since I thought about that. But I share that story because I was so afraid to take risks because I was so afraid of getting it wrong. So what happens is, right, when we don't think there's some forgiveness or some openness to being wrong or to taking risks, is we do what we think is safe. And what we think is safe is often not the right thing to do, as I learned the hard way. So with your teams, if you want them to take risks, you got to add in forgiveness. Otherwise, analysis paralysis and safety take over. Okay, so this one is, well, obviously learning from mistakes, learning and letting go, as I keep saying. We've got to view our mistakes as learning opportunities rather than failures. Critical. Now, I'm not a person who thinks you should get the word failure out of your vocabulary or not talk about things as failures or that they failed. Because you know what? Sometimes they do. But guess what? I am, and my team knows, 100% okay if things fail. Now, I don't want them to fail. I want them to succeed. But if they fail, I'm okay with admitting it because I'm all about being real. And I'm okay with learning from it and letting go and doing something different the next time, right? Building on the experience we just had. You almost have to treat it as a scientist. So when I say learn from mistakes, I'm not saying that you shouldn't call it failure. Look, sometimes shit bombs. It is what it is. But you can be okay with that too. You can look at that almost more objectively and say, what can I learn from this experience? I do that every single day. Look, some of the things I do out there hit it out of the park out of the gate. And sometimes they just bomb. They just bomb. It is what it is. And it's okay. It's okay to say that failed. What's not okay is to let that shut you down, create that baggage that you carry around, not learn from it, and not let go. That's why forgiveness really matters. And oh, by the way, if you have a culture where forgiveness is prevalent, calling things a failure is actually okay. Here's what I find often happens. We're afraid to call something a failure or say it failed because of the consequences. Because in this culture that we're in, whatever that is, failure is really bad. And it goes on the failure shelf and you get dinged against your record, you get put on lower projects. So why would you call anything a failure? So if you're a leader out there thinking, yeah, why won't my team ever admit things are a failure? If you're looking at yourself in the mirror and going, oh, I have a really hard time with that. Maybe it's because there's no forgiveness and no learning and letting go. Okay. All right, we're getting a lot of comments about that one. So clearly the whole failure thing is a big deal for all of us. Okay, boosting morale and motivation. So forgiveness boosts morale and motivation. Is that at all a surprise? I mean, think about it in the people you know personally. Doesn't it make them feel more connected and more engaged with you? So here's the thing, when we forgive and we really understand, team members feel valued and understood. Our employees feel valued and understood. So they're eager to contribute more. So morale goes up, motivation goes up. Here's the opposite. Morale does not go up if I think that one mistake is going to end up with 3 meetings in my boss's office and some email going out to the group and being put on a lesser project. But if I think that, hey, if I mess up, if I say the wrong thing, if I make the wrong decision, if I make a mistake in that Excel spreadsheet I sent you, that I have an opportunity to correct it, to learn, but there's going to be letting go, forgiveness. Of course, my morale goes up and I'm more excited to go to work. Nobody wants to go to work when they feel like they're going to be dinged all the time. You know, years ago, I was working in this brand strategy and innovation firm in New York City. And one of the leaders, well, really one of the founders, 2 founders of this company. And one of them was the worst boss I've ever had. She was manipulative. She was egotistical and territorial. She didn't like anybody that would outshine her. And she held things against you. And I remember going through a arc of being really excited to go into work to feeling like every time I opened that door, I was walking on eggshells. And I took that stress home with me every night and I brought it into work every day. And it's because she had no learning and letting go. If you messed up, it was like you were blackballed and you had to work so hard to get back in her favor. Now, fortunately, the other partner realized this as the company grew pretty quickly and she was bought out. But man, it was so hard to work for her because your morale and your motivation just plummeted the more you worked with her. And the worst part about her, by the way, is that in the beginning, you thought you were cool and special because she favored you, right? She put you on top of this pedestal and you could do no wrong until you made a mistake. And then you fell off that pedestal so hard. And this is why forgiveness is so important, learning and letting go, because first of all, you shouldn't put people on pedestals. There's no need for that. But second, there's no falling hard. There's no walking on eggshells. Oh, that was the worst year working for her. It was horrible. Horrible. My morale, my motivation, I never wanted to speak up in meetings, even when I thought maybe I had something that could contribute. I was so afraid of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or looking bad. And I kept working like, white knuckling and working triple time just to get in her favor. And it never worked. So that's an extreme example, but that's what lack of forgiveness really looks like, because the opposite of that, in my opinion, is grudges, and grudges against past mistakes, grudges against flaws. Look, we all have flaws. We don't get everything 100% right. That is a false expectation that we should never put on somebody. It's unrealistic. So forgiveness is important because morale and motivation goes up because people know you have their backs, and forgiveness is a big part of that. Okay, enhancing collaboration. Well, no surprise here. I think it falls with everything else we're talking about, but forgiveness breaks down barriers between people, between departments, between teams. So it fosters collaborative environment where innovation can thrive. Why? Because we trust each other, because we feel more corrected, because we have more open communication. We're more willing to speak our mind, and the people on the other side of the table are more willing to receive it, even if they don't agree with it. So collaboration goes up, and we know that real collaboration drives real innovation, which drives real results. All right, the next one is, there's 3 left. The next one is conflict resolution. So I think constructive conflict is really good for innovation. Debate is important. It helps us fill the gaps, helps us see things from different perspectives. We know that a yes man conversation or a yes woman conversation doesn't get us anywhere. It's just groupthink. So constructive conflict is important, but it can also create real tension within groups, within teams. So forgiveness is a real powerful tool for resolving conflicts quickly and effectively. It helps maintain a positive and productive atmosphere. It's crucial, really, for innovative work, is forgiveness around conflict. If you and I, let's say you and I are working on something and we have a conflict, we don't agree, and let's say it escalates a little bit. If we take that and let that be our guiding factor for the rest of our work time together, we're never going to get to real results. We're never going to drive innovation because we're letting that conflict take over our relationship. And that's why forgiveness matters so much, because forgiveness helps us move forward. Now, again, forgiveness is about learning and letting go. So I may learn that you and I are not aligned on this, or that you have a different view. I may also learn that I'm wrong. I may also learn that we're better together. But the point is, conflict shouldn't drive the culture moving forward. When conflict drives the culture, that's when it becomes toxic and nothing gets done. Okay. Empathy and emotional intelligence. So empathy and emotional intelligence are really key to forgiveness, because we got to seek to understand. We got to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. And these traits really help us build innovation and cohesion between teams, right? Because of course it fosters understanding and support. So empathy and emotional intelligence get dialed up when we add forgiveness in. They're really fundamentals to it. But when we are seeking to forgive, when that is our go-to position, we're looking to find that connection. We're looking to be more empathetic, to really understand where the other person or people are coming from. That's really important, isn't it? By the way, that fully drives innovation, because now we're not looking at anything from just one lane. I'm open to looking at it from your lane as well. Okay, lastly, the long-term benefits, right? For forgiving culture is immense. It sustains innovation, higher employee retention, higher morale, and higher organizational success. So I think we ought to wrap it all up. We often think of forgiveness as this personal thing of, like, forgiving someone who's done us wrong. But really, it's much more important than that. And it's much more impactful than that. So think about forgiveness as the ultimate innovation hack. It allows for risk-taking, stronger collaboration, more open communication. It allows people to feel that psychological safety that we all talk about, to put those big ideas, to have that disagreement that's important, to filling in the gaps and moving things forward, to making those bold decisions, to being confident, to driving innovation, to driving productivity. So forgiveness is the ultimate hack. Remember, when I'm talking about it in the work or business setting, I'm talking about forgiveness as learning and letting go. I think I think we have challenges on both sides. I think we have challenges on the learning side because we're afraid to face our failures. We're afraid to actually look at them in reality and say, where did this go wrong? We're afraid to face our mistakes and admit them, but we can't learn from them if we don't see them truly. And letting go. I mean, how hard is that? I mean, I have a hard time letting go of things that, like, someone said to me in the morning and it's the afternoon and it's just a nothing burger. So we got to learn to let go of it. We got to learn to not carry that baggage around, so that we can create that mental clarity, that innovative space, that connection, that communication. Learn and let go. That is forgiveness. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate you all. This has been really, I'm so glad that we got to cover the topic of forgiveness. And like I said, in all my work across the board, it has come up as important. And you never know, maybe you'll learn something for your personal life as well about forgiveness. It's really the key to all relationships in some way. And I'll say what other people say. I've heard Mel Robbins say, and some other people in that space say, it's not about not having boundaries. It's not about standing your ground, but it is about learning and letting go. That's our spin on it. And I think it's an important one. All right. Until next time.